Well, Sam has come down from Sydney, and he's a very, very interesting character. We love him here. We love him. He's been a very dear friend of mine, for my husband's, for years now. Spent years coming and visiting us. But he's got a unique ministry. He just travels all over the place, preaching about the love of God everywhere. And you'll know why. Once you hear him, you'll hear that love shining through. But he's got a very interesting, unique aspect to his knowledge, is that he loves the medical missionary work. And he's worked a lot in medical missionary too. And I asked him to have a little segment. We're going to have our meal at 5:30. But just before, as we start, I wanted to ask him to come up, and he can give you a little bit of a idea of some of the medical missionary stories that he's got. I don't know what he's going to talk about. He's only just arrived. I don't even know. Okay, I'll let you go to it, Sam. Pastor Sam. Sam Braga is his surname. Pardon? Okay, thank you. No, you got to wait. You got to wait for
Record. Okay, now we are on. I'm glad to be here tonight. We're going to spend a week together, and I guess you are already having a wonderful banquet with the knowledge that Kay is sharing with you. The stuff you're going to learn here, most probably you won't learn anywhere else. And so consider yourselves blessed to be here. It's knowledge that if you were to learn it somewhere else, you'll pay a lot of money. Because it's not only theoretical knowledge, it's knowledge that has been gained through many years of experience. And so I'm not a health professional. I am a pastor by trade. I do not work as a church pastor. I work as a traveling evangelist. So this year so far, I've been in January. I was in the Philippines. Then I went to El Salvador. I spent the month of February in El Salvador, 5 weeks. From there, I was supposed to go to Cuba, but that got canceled because of the situation in Cuba. So instead I went to Argentina. Then I came back to the United States, came back to Australia. And I've just returned from the Philippines again, ran a big program there, and we had almost 400 or more than 400 baptisms. Once I finish here, I will be traveling to Tonga, then to Alice Springs, and then to Poland for 3 weeks. From there to United States, Argentina, back to Australia, and I'll finish my year in South Australia. And so they say there is no rest for the wicked. I must be very wicked. And so that's what I do. I'll tell you a lot of stories as I talk to you. I've got a unique form of ministry in the fact that I live by faith. When people say to me there is no God, I ask them, who pays my salary? Because since 2012, I haven't earned a salary, a formal salary. I depend on God. And so I do not depend on the government. I do not earn Centrelink. And so I haven't had a formal paycheck for the last 14 years. And so sometimes I've got plenty. Sometimes I don't have. But that doesn't stop me. I often travel around. I go overseas with no money in my pocket, or sometimes $50, or sometimes I travel with thousands of dollars. When I go to Cuba, I smuggle $10,000, $15,000 with me into Cuba in order to help the church over there, because the church in Cuba is a suffering church. At the moment, we are sending money to Cuba in order to feed our church members there, because there's very little food. And so all kinds of things. And so when people tell me there is no God, I laugh, because I know there is God, because I'm alive, I'm dressed, I eat, I've got, I live very well here in Australia. But the road is good. Every fortnight I have to pay my rent is $1,500. And often I don't have the money on Monday night to pay my rent. Because if I get money and all my needs are covered, I'll send the money elsewhere. We employ missionaries in different parts of the world. And so Monday night I often on my knees asking the Lord, please Lord, provide the money to pay my rent. And He does. He does every time. So if you want to know God, live by faith. God becomes very real. I know a fair bit about health, and probably don't know as much as Kay. Her knowledge is very deep. But since I was little, I grew up in a home where my father was a self-taught naturopath. And he's self-taught, and he also learned at the feet of a Chilean naturopath that was very well known in the Spanish-speaking world. And Dad, when he was young, he was sick and went to see this naturopath, and the naturopath told him how to change his diet, and his problem disappeared. And so Dad became very interested in natural healing and started learning, because Dad he loved reading, and so he self-taught. And then he started teaching people how to live well. He helped hundreds of people. We never went to the doctor. We never took medicine. At home, it was always, if you were sick, Mom would rub your body with cold water, or she'll do a cold sheet treatment, things like that. Kay will teach you, and I will talk some of those things about. So, in our context, in Western medicine, not so much now. There's been an explosion of knowledge in the last 15 years in the Western world regarding natural medicine because of social media. And so the normal medicine, allopathic medicine, no longer has the monopoly on health. Now the public has the knowledge. It's open. So if you want to know anything about health, you don't usually consult your doctor anymore. You jump first on social media. Now you can ask AI, and so on and on and on. We are not against doctors and against hospitals and all that, but there's another side of health and medicine that it was kept from us for a long time. And the reality is that there is no one who knows your body better than yourself. And we should learn to a certain degree become our own doctors and to manage our well-being, because health does not begin with a pill. Health begins the way you live your life. We call that lifestyle, isn't it? And so health is the natural result of the way you live your life. It's as simple as that. And the doctor cannot live the life for you. The naturopath cannot live your life. It is you who decide what you eat, what you drink, what time you go to bed, whether you exercise or not, how much water you drink, or if you drink any water, and so on and on and on. The way you think, the way you relate to others, which is all part of who we are and our health. And so grew up in a home where we were just treated with natural remedies. I don't remember ever going to the doctor when I was a child. Ever. I never, ever took a Panadol. Never. Or aspirin. I must have been a teenager when I first tasted Panadol or aspirin. I don't think we had Panadols in those days. It was aspirin. And I found it disgusting. Because natural remedies usually taste really nice. Because what is natural remedies? Well, the worst of natural remedies is Swedish bitters. I don't know whether you tasted Swedish bitters. They're really, really bitter. And for me, it's normal. When I travel, I take a little bottle with Swedish bitters. And because I stay with people, I don't usually stay in hotels. People, they look at you and they think they have to fatten you. And they give you food, and you say, no, I don't want to eat anymore. No, Pastor, we prepared this for you. And at the end, you eat things that you don't normally eat. So I carry my Swedish bitter bottle. And one morning I was having it, in the United States, was staying with a Salvadorian family, and he comes out, the husband comes out, what are you drinking? I said, Swedish bitters. What is that? It's bitter herbs that help your liver. I said, oh, do you want to taste some? I said, of course. Yeah. And he went, ah! Of course, very bitter, but I'm used to it. I've always had them, you know. My kids are used to them, you know. They all have their Swedish bitter bottles at home. And so, health is the product, the way you live your life. If you look at your life in perspective, you are planning today or planting today to the way you're going to harvest your life in your old age. If you want to be a healthy old person, you better be healthy now. And so, when growing up, people used to think natural remedies, you got to be crazy, because health comes in a bottle, in a pill. No, those things, you know, it's all right when you have a cough, but not when you have cancer. But actually, natural remedies are very powerful, very powerful. I remember probably the earliest memory I have of seeing my parents treat someone. It's a lady called Teresa, came to our home, and Dad was talking to her and said, "What is wrong with you?" And I was playing around, you know, must have been 4 or 5, and she lifted his head, and she had a gangrenous wound here. It was black, and the smell, the stench. It was all wrapped up, of course. She unpacked and says, the doctors want to amputate my leg from here down. And they say that it may stop, but if it doesn't stop, they'll have to amputate up here. And so, is there anything you can do to help me? And says, my dad, yes, of course, said. He said, that will be gone in 3 months. But you have to make a commitment to what we're going to do for you. And so Mom and Dad they changed her diet and her lifestyle completely. She went into a raw diet. And then she started washing the wound with herbs and putting mud packs, clay packs on that wound. That sounds crazy. How you put clay on a wound, an open wound? And I remember she would come, you know, once a week, or my mom and dad would go, and sometimes they'll take me. And so I saw much of what took place. And as time went by, the wound became red again. They scraped all the blackness, all the dead flesh of it. And she had to expose it to the sun daily. She had to do exercise, drink a lot of water. She only ate raw, fresh and fruits. She had to forgive people. There was a whole thing. The whole person was treated, not just the physical aspect. At the end of 3 months, the wound was healed. Completely healed. And so, how powerful natural remedies are. They are powerful, but they are as powerful as you are willing to practice them. You see? I remember my mom talking to a lady because she had problems forgiving her husband. And she had a lot of bitterness. And while she would not let go of that wound, the first few weeks was very difficult. Very little began to happen. When the emotional was fixed, the wound began to heal very quickly. And so one of the things, I'm going to talk about that in my next talk, is that the difference between natural medicine and allopathic medicine is that when you go to the doctor, if you've got a pain here, the doctor is going to treat that pain here. And there are specialists for the pain here. True? If you've got a problem in the eye, you've got to go and see the specialist in the eye. So every organ is treated as an organ. Natural medicine does not see the organ by itself. The natural medicines, through the organs, a good naturopath will see the whole person. Because what affects this organ is affecting the whole body, or it could be that the whole body is affecting the organ. Do you understand what I mean? And so in dealing with one illness, illness is an alarm mechanism. That's all illness is. It's like fever. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of things happening today that natural medicine is affecting the wider world of medicine. I was listening to a scientist, a doctor. He's a surgeon. He works in a massive hospital in the United States, and he's also a scientist. And he's a doctor that works in ICU. And he was telling his stories during COVID. And he read a story of Brazil, that in a hospital in Brazil, to treat the COVID patients, they decided to test something. They had nothing to lose. They said, we're going to take just one of the lights that come from the sun, the red light, what is it called? Infrared light. And there's one aspect of infrared light that specifically affects the mitochondria of the cell. And they made a jacket with LED lights that projected just that light. It's an invisible light. And they dressed 60 patients with that jacket, COVID patients that were very, very seriously ill. But only 30 of those patients, the lights were turned on. The others were off. No one knew because you couldn't see the lights. The 30 patients that used the jacket left hospital 4 days before the others. And the symptoms decreased very quickly. And so these scientists heard about it and said, I don't have the jacket, but I can do something. I can start taking my patients outside and expose them to the sun. And that's what he did. And his patients, he had critical patients, they were dying. And all he did was, all the thing that did difference in the treatment was take the patient outside and expose them to the sun for only 15 minutes. And his patients recovered. Wow. And so now he has done a specialization on sunlight. And one of the things you're going to learn through Kay is that one of the laws of health is sunlight. And sun is incredibly powerful. We have heard about sunlight, for your mood, for your vitamin D, but it has 1,000 different uses. So natural remedies are very powerful when you know how to use them. And if you come also with a mindset that is necessary. I was in Poland, and Amanda, the year before, I've been to Poland many times preaching, and the year before this man was coming to my programs and he said, I would like to quit smoking. He was a 40-year smoker, and he smoked so much he smoked day and night. He was in his 60s, but he looked 80. And he said, would you help me? I says, yes, I will pray for you. Do you believe that God can help you? He says, no, I don't believe in God. I says, but I believe. And there was my interpreter. I said, do you believe? Yes, I believe. So if 2 of us believe, it's enough. So we prayed for him. And this year I went to see him to the hospital because he had given himself to the Lord, but now he had gangrene in one foot. And they were already planning in the hospital, they were making him ready to cut his toes, to amputate his toes. And so I went to see him and he said, Pastor Sam, he said, I want to tell you something. The day you prayed for me, I never smoked again. Even the desire disappeared from my mouth, he said. I never ever wanted to smoke again. Isn't it amazing? We're going to talk this week, tonight and tomorrow, about probably the most ignored aspect of well-being in human beings in the Western world, which is the spiritual life. If your spiritual life is sick, nothing can heal. Because the spiritual life is the cornerstone. So he had given his life to the Lord. Now he had 2 things. He had gangrene and he had cancer because of his smoking. And so the wife, I said, they don't have to amputate. And so I taught them what to do. They were in the hospital. They couldn't change the diet. All we need to do is bring fresh blood to that food, because that's a problem with you've got diabetes, your capillaries begin to die, and so fresh blood doesn't flow to that area. So what do we do with that? Well, two simple things. At night time, give him a cayenne poultice. He'll sleep with a cayenne poultice. I taught them how to do a cayenne poultice. And during the day, you'll put the feet in. You'll do alternate 3 or 4 times a day. You'll put hot and cold, and he'll put his foot into the hot bucket for 3 minutes, and the other one icy cold water for 1 minute. You know, the third day, he had red blood flowing out of his toes. And so they are powerful, but you got to believe in them. You got to practice them. So you've come here, you will learn a lot of things that actually work. But if you practice them, you don't have to get sick to practice well-being, to live healthily. It's better. Prevention is better than a cure. Amen? Yes, prevention is always better than a cure. Why wait to be sick to practice these things when you can practice them now and diminish the chances of getting sick? True? I was operated on a big melanoma here, but they didn't know it was melanoma. They thought it was just a mole that I had since I was a little boy. But it had grown in size, and my family began to pester me. I said, you need to go and see the doctor on that. And I went to see the specialist. The specialist looked at it and said, you had it so long, I don't think it's melanoma. We'll just cut it off to be sure. And so I cut it off. Well, they cut it off. They operated, they took it off. And then a few days later, he rings and says, you need to come and see me urgently. And so I went, and I said to my wife, this mustn't be good news. Doctors don't call you to go and see them when it's good news. And so I went in, and he said, it's malignant spreading melanoma, he said. We need to cut further around. And I said, you won't touch me anymore. He said, go on holidays, come back. And I said, no, you won't touch me. You're irresponsible because you want me to go on holidays. This is very serious. I was a pastor at church. In a church, I was pastoring a church. I had a naturopath there, and I spoke with him, and he said, Sam, if you wait for that to happen, you'll be dead in 6 months. So he gave me a cream. Today we know it by the name of Cansima. It was the early development of that cream, and he says, put it in. It'll send you through hell for a few days, and then you'll be fine. And so I put it in the wound, and man, the pain was unbelievable. But 3 days after, the pain was gone, and because I don't take painkillers, I had to just take the pain for 3 days. And then it took about 6 weeks, but the wound grew in size, and eventually it came off the leg, a piece of flesh that had tentacles going right into my thigh. Eventually dried off, it fell off, and the wound healed. And that was year 2005. That's 21 years ago. But I went for a very strict regimen of not eating anything cooked. I only ate raw for 6 months. And so there are things that are alternatives to normal medicine. When the doctor says there is nothing you can do, that's nothing according to their knowledge. But how much do they know of all the knowledge there is in the world? A doctor may know 5% of the medical knowledge. 5%. So when he says there is nothing he knows. Do not take that word to think that there is nothing. There must be something, because God is not silly to have left nothing. True? And so there is a lot in natural. As you travel around and you hear, I come across people of all kinds of walks, and you go to Central America, you go to Asia, and people talk about folk medicine. And folk medicine is natural medicine that has been tested over centuries or millennia, that the locals have practiced to heal stomach problems, to deal with ulcers and all that. And so when they tell you there's nothing you can do, all they're telling you, there's nothing we know that you can do. Unless you say, fine, just leave me alone. When you go to the doctor, they give you a diagnosis, don't let them make the decision for you. They do not own your body. You must make the decision for yourself. True? Because they start pushing and saying, this is going to happen to you, that is going to happen to you, blah, blah, blah. But at the end, you got to determine what way you're going to follow. True? Yeah. And you pay the consequences. Not them. True? Yes. If my medicine had not worked in my leg, maybe I would have died. But we have to choose. We are free to choose. The government cannot make our choices. Doctors cannot make our choices. My wife cannot make my choice. I must make my choice and bear the consequences. But I will be happy to bear my consequences when I have made my choice. True? And so that's another thing that natural medicine empowers you to do, is to make your own choices. Because when you choose, the chances of you healing are a lot greater than when it's imposed on you. Because in healing, you need to engage your will, and your will needs to be free to say, yes, I'm going to do this, and I know the pros and cons, and I'm happy to do it. Be it normal medicine or natural medicine, you choose, you are free to choose. True? Okay, so this section, I'm going to tell you some stories like this I have shared with you and of my experience with natural medicine. Okay? 5:20. Time to stop for dinner. Are there any questions? Yes?
Just interesting, if you hadn't used the cancer and you'd had surgery, they wouldn't have got all those roots going.
No.
So you would have gone in.
No. It would have probably extended my life, but eventually somewhere else the cancer would have returned. And I know that cancer was... What Cansima does is Cansima would follow the melanoma and will kill it, but a couple of years later I treated a melanoma down here and with the same way, and now I know that I have 2 melanomas here. And I'm going to put Cansima when I get 6 weeks off. Because at least 2 weeks off, because the first 2 weeks are very difficult when you put Cansima. Cansima is prohibited in Australia. It's very difficult to get.
What's the ingredients in it?
Oh, there's... Kay, do you have the ingredients? She'll give them to you.
I actually just use the cancer weed, radium weed.
Yeah, that's very good.
Grown everywhere.
Yeah, radium weed, it's very good for surface skins.
Yes.
But Cansima needs to be... Cansima goes... It's very good for melanoma, Cansima. Very good for melanoma. Black salve is called too. But black salve, it's not the same ingredients as Cansima. You can, if you want, you need it, you can order it from Ecuador. The guy that invented Cansima was chased out of the United States. He lives in Ecuador. And his Alpha Labs, alphalabs.com. And to send it to Australia, they send it with another name. So you can get it. They send it in little pots because you only need a little bit. And so I've given it to a lot of people, and it's helped a lot. And you can make it at home. Once Kay gives you the ingredients, you can make it at home. And you can make it in big batches if you want, and give it to all your neighbors. Any other questions?
What diet did you follow? You followed a raw diet.
A raw.
Yeah.
Raw diet is you just eat everything raw. So your fruits, your vegetables, you have nothing animal in it, and your almonds, all your, what do you call them, nuts. So you have that, and people say, but how can you survive on that? You survive really well. Yeah. And then as you advance, later on you can introduce your cooked beans and lentils and all those things. But you can also spread them. While you're on your raw diet, you can spread all your legumes and eat the spread. And I did a lot of juicing too. Well, as the week advances, I'm going to show you what are the things that every home should have for natural remedies. Every home should have a kit of things that are needed in the home in order to treat yourself. When you practice natural remedies, you are your own doctor. It's very freeing. We're not saying that we do not need the doctor. When I need, sometimes I go to the doctor because the medical system for diagnosis is fantastic. It's very good. And also, so we do not work in competition, we work in cooperation. But we try to make the person the owner of their own health and the manager of your own health, because that's the way God made it. True? All right, we'll leave it there because Dina is going to be, yes? It's Alpha Labs, is ALPHA, Labs, LABS, I think it's .com. I'll search for it and I'll finish with this. Remember, health doesn't come in a herb or on a pill. Health comes in obedience to a set of rules that God has given us to guide our life. And that's true health. True health is when you live holistically, they would say. When you're taking care of every aspect of the being. And that's the plan of God. That's true health. All right, we'll leave it there. You want me to pray for the... Yes, all right, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for the time that we are spending here together, Lord, learning on how to look after our bodies and the knowledge we receive to also help others. Lord, as we get together and we have dinner, I pray, Lord, that you will bless the food that we're about to eat, that it gives us strength and health. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.